It is the 3rd of July, 1187, and the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem is dying of thirst. They are strung out across a high, dry plateau in the July heat, thousands of them, knights and foot soldiers and crossbowmen, cased in mail that has turned into an oven under the sun. There is no water. The wells behind them are used up and the springs ahead of them are held by the enemy. And the men and the horses have been marching and fighting all day through a rising storm of dust with their tongues swelling in their mouths. Somewhere near the front, held high on its pole where every man can see it, is the most sacred thing the kingdom owns. The true cross, a great jeweled relic of gilded wood, believed to hold a fragment of the cross of Christ himself, carried into battle as the standard of God. It has never been lost. It has always meant victory. And all around them now, out in the shimmering haze, is Saladin. His horsemen circle just out of reach, loosing arrows and vanishing. And as the exhausted Christians try to make a camp for the night, on ground with no water at all, the Muslims set fire to the dry summer scrub upwind of them, so that the smoke rolls down across the Crusader lines, and the thirsty, choking army passes the worst night of its life staring at 2 low hills on the horizon, twin peaks that the local people call the Horns of Hattin. In the morning they will march for the lake they can see glittering in the distance and will never reach. They have walked into a trap, and there is no way back out of it. Welcome back to History with Rohrmann. This is episode 4 of our 6-part series on the Crusades. Last time, we watched the Muslim world, divided for a century, finally begin to close like a ring around the Christian states of the coast, uniting under one rising leader, Saladin, while the Kingdom of Jerusalem quietly began to rot from within. This is the episode where it all comes due. This is the disaster. For 88 years, a few thousand Christians had held onto the impossible on the edge of the world. In this episode, they are going to lose almost all of it, and they are going to lose it in the end in a single catastrophic day. This is the story of the 2 things that collided at the Horns of Hattin. A Muslim world at last made whole by a leader worthy of it, and a Christian kingdom that chose exactly the wrong moment to tear itself apart. Let's get into it. Start with the man on the other side of that smoke, because by 1187 he was the most important person in this whole story, and we have been holding him back for 2 episodes on purpose. Saladin. We left him at the end of last time as a young Kurdish officer who had stumbled almost by accident into the mastery of Egypt. What he became over the next 13 years is one of the great careers of the Middle Ages. When his old overlord Nur ad-Din died in 1174, Saladin moved to gather the whole inheritance into his own hands, and he spent more than a decade doing it, patiently and not always gently. He took Damascus. He fought long, grinding campaigns, and here is the part that matters. Many of those campaigns were against other Muslims, rival princes and cities that did not want to bow to him. He besieged Aleppo for years before it finally accepted him in 1183. His enemies accused him, not unfairly, of using the banner of holy war to build a personal empire. But whatever his ambition, the result was real, and it was exactly what the Crusaders had feared for 90 years. By the mid-1180s, for the first time, Egypt and Syria answered to a single man. The ring had closed, and Saladin was no mere warlord. He was pious, genuinely and deeply so, a patron of scholars and builder of schools. He was a shrewd politician. He was famous already in his own lifetime on both sides for a certain magnanimity, a habit of keeping his word and sparing the fallen. He could also be utterly ruthless when he judged it necessary. He was the champion of the jihad to retake Jerusalem, and he had spent his whole life assembling the tool that could finally do it. Do not picture a villain. Picture the most formidable and the most admired opponent the Crusaders would ever face. He is the co-star of this episode and the next. Now turn to the other side of the ring, to the kingdom he was closing in on, because its tragedy is that it was destroyed as much by its own hand as by his. At the heart of it, for a while, was one of the most extraordinary and heartbreaking figures of the entire age. Baldwin IV, the Leper King. He came to the throne as a boy, and he was, by every account, brave, intelligent, and born to rule, and he was also dying slowly and publicly of leprosy. As the disease ate away at his body, he governed anyway, from behind a cloth mask that hid a ruined face, sometimes carried to war on a litter because he could no longer sit a horse, in constant pain, going slowly blind, and losing the use of his hands. And here is the astonishing thing. Under this dying boy, the kingdom could still win. The proof came in 1177, at a place called Montgisard. Saladin, thinking the leper boy no threat, invaded the kingdom with a large army and let it spread out to raid. And the 16-year-old king, his hands already failing, rode out with a scratch force, surprised Saladin's scattered host, and shattered it. Saladin barely escaped back to Egypt with a fraction of his men. It was a humiliation, and it is worth holding on to, because it tells you the collapse that is coming was not inevitable. Even now, even sick, even outnumbered, the kingdom could still beat the greatest man of the age. What it could not survive was itself, because the tragedy of Baldwin IV was that he had no son, and everyone knew he was dying, and so for years the great barons of the kingdom circled the throne he would leave empty, and split into factions that came to hate each other more than they feared Saladin. When the Leper King finally died in 1185, worn out at just 24, the crown passed to his little nephew, a child who was crowned as Baldwin V, and who died himself within the year in 1186. And now the dam broke. With both kings dead, the throne went, through marriage, to a man almost everyone agreed was not fit for it. Guy of Lusignan. Guy was a newcomer from France who had married the old king's sister, Sibylla. He was handsome and weak and easily led, and he owed his crown to a faction rather than to any gift for ruling. Set against him and his party was the great voice of caution in the kingdom, Raymond III, Count of Tripoli, an experienced, hard-headed noble who understood Saladin, who had even made his own truce with him, and who argued again and again that the one thing the kingdom must not do was give Saladin the open battle he wanted. The kingdom, in other words, split cleanly down the middle at the worst possible moment. A weak king and a war party on one side, the wisest man in the realm on the other, and the two sides barely speaking. And then a single reckless man lit the fuse. His name was Raynald of Châtillon, and he was the lord of the great desert castle of Carrick, out on the caravan roads to the southeast, and he was, to put it plainly, a bandit with a title. Years before, he had done the almost unthinkable. He had launched ships onto the Red Sea and raided toward the coast near Mecca and Medina, the holiest ground in Islam, an outrage Saladin never forgot. Now, in the winter of 1186 to 1187, with a truce in force between the kingdom and Saladin, Raynald fell upon a great Muslim caravan crossing near his lands. Merchants, pilgrims, wealth, and plundered it, and when Saladin demanded justice, Raynald refused, and the weak king Guy could not, or would not, force his own baron to hand back the loot. That was all Saladin needed. Raynald had broken the truce, and by breaking it he had handed Saladin both a reason for war and, far more dangerously, the moral high ground, the banner of the just holy war, the defense of the pilgrim roads against a treaty-breaking robber. Saladin swore a personal oath to kill Raynald with his own hands. And in the summer of 1187, he called up the full united strength of Egypt and Syria, the largest army he had ever gathered, crossed the river Jordan, and came for the kingdom. He moved first against the town of Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee, and there is a bitter irony in the target, because the lady besieged inside its citadel was the wife of Raymond of Tripoli, the very man now urging caution. Saladin was doing it deliberately. He was dangling bait. He wanted the Crusaders to lose their heads and march out to the rescue, away from their water and their strong positions, into the dry hills where his horse archers could destroy them. And on the night the decision had to be made, the kingdom held one last, fateful council. Raymond, whose own wife was the one trapped in Tiberias, stood up and argued against marching. "Let Tiberias fall," he said. "Let them even take my own wife. I would rather lose the town than lose the kingdom. The wells between here and there are dry. If we march out into that waterless country in July, Saladin will not have to beat us. The sun will do it for him. Wait, stay by the water. Do not give him the battle he is praying for." It was the right advice. It was probably the best military judgment anyone offered in the whole history of the Crusader kingdom. And Guy did not take it. The war party got to him in the dark, Raynald and the fierce master of the Templars, Gerard of Rydfort, who whispered that Raymond was a coward or worse, a traitor secretly in league with the enemy. And the weak king, wanting to look strong, changed his mind and gave the order that doomed the army. In the morning they would march. The whole host of the kingdom, and the true cross carried before it, would leave the springs behind and set out across the burning plateau toward Tiberias. They set out on the 3rd of July into exactly the trap Raymond had described, and everything that followed we saw at the very start. The waterless march, the choking dust, Saladin's horsemen swarming the column, never closing, always stinging. The dry scrub set alight so the smoke rolled over the dying men. A thirst so total that discipline itself began to dissolve. By nightfall the army was stranded on high, dry ground within sight of the lake it could not reach, and Saladin simply closed his ring around it and waited for the sun to come up. On the 4th of July, 1187, at the Horns of Hattin, the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem was destroyed. It was less a battle than a slow strangling. Maddened by thirst, blinded by smoke, the Crusader foot soldiers broke and crowded up the twin hills and could not be brought back down to fight. The knights charged and charged again in desperate courage. Saladin's own son, watching, is said to have cried out in excitement each time the Frankish charge drove the Muslims back, until his father told him grimly that nothing was decided while the king's red tent still stood. And then the tent came down. The exhausted knights were overwhelmed, the last of them captured on the hillside among the rocks, and with them fell the unthinkable prize. The true cross itself was taken, torn from the hands of the kingdom and carried off in triumph. To the Christians it was a wound deeper than any defeat in the field. It felt as though God himself had been captured. The king of Jerusalem was a prisoner. Almost the entire fighting nobility of the kingdom was dead or in chains. In a single day, the army that had defended Outremer for 4 generations had ceased to exist. What happened next in Saladin's tent is the scene everyone remembers, and it is worth telling slowly because it holds the whole man in it. The great captives were brought before him, and among them the 2 who mattered most, Guy, the defeated king, and Raynald of Châtillon, the truce-breaker Saladin had sworn to kill. The king was swaying with thirst, and Saladin, in the ancient courtesy of the desert, that to give a man water is to grant him your protection, had a cup of iced water, cooled with the snows of Mount Hermon, brought to him. Guy drank, and then passed the cup to Raynald beside him. And Saladin stopped it. That water, he made clear, was given by the king and not by me. I am under no obligation to this man. And then he turned on Raynald and named his crimes: the broken truce, the plundered pilgrims, the raid on the holy places, and offered him the choice of conversion or death. And when Raynald answered with defiance, Saladin struck him down with his own hand, keeping the oath he had sworn. And then, to the terrified Guy, he said the line that has echoed ever since: "It is not the custom of a king to kill a king." Guy would live. That was Saladin. Merciless where he judged justice demanded it. For the captured Templars and Hospitallers, the fanatical warrior monks he considered too dangerous ever to release, he ordered execution and had it carried out. But magnanimous by both calculation and by faith to almost everyone else. He spared the ordinary soldiers. He spared the king. He understood, better than any man of his age, that mercy could be a weapon sharper than the sword, and that the world was watching to see what kind of conqueror he would be. And now the kingdom had no army left to stop him, and the whole strange world of Outremer began to fall like a house of cards. There were no men to hold the walls. All through that summer and autumn the cities of the coast surrendered one after another, many without a fight. Acre, the great port, fell within days. Town after town simply opened its gates, because there was no one left to defend them and no relief could possibly come. Only one great city on the whole coast held out and refused to fall, saved at the last moment by the timely arrival of a tough newcomer from the west named Conrad of Montferrat, who slammed its gates shut in Saladin's face and dug in. That city was Tyre, and hold on to it, because that single stubborn foothold is where the next episode will begin. But everything was now moving toward one place, the place this whole war had always been about. In September of 1187, Saladin marched on Jerusalem. The holy city had almost no one left to defend it. Its knights were dead or captive at Hattin. Into that emptiness stepped one honorable man, a baron named Balian of Ibelin, who had come to the city under a safe conduct simply to rescue his own family, and who found the terrified population begging him to take command. He stayed. He knighted every boy old enough to hold a sword. He organized a hopeless defense, and for about 2 weeks he held the walls against the master of the East. But it could not last, and Balian knew it, and so he did the only thing left. He negotiated. And when Saladin's men pressed the attack, Balian sent word that if there were no terms, the defenders would burn the city to the ground, destroy the Muslim holy places, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, kill their own prisoners and die in the ruins, leaving Saladin nothing but ash. It was a threat, and it worked. Terms were agreed. And here we reach the moral heart of this whole episode, the reason it matters, and the deliberate mirror it holds up to everything that came before. On the 2nd of October, 1187, Saladin took Jerusalem. And there was no massacre. Cast your mind back to episode 2, to the summer of 1099, when the men of the First Crusade had first taken this same city and butchered its inhabitants in the streets, Muslim and Jew alike, until, in the horrified words of their own chroniclers, the blood ran to the ankles of the horses. Now, 88 years later, the same city changed hands the other way, and Saladin let its Christian people ransom themselves and walk out alive. The ransoms were set low. When the poor could not pay, he and his commanders quietly let many go free, or paid for them out of their own purse. There was no slaughter. The Christian holy places were protected. The long columns of refugees were allowed to march away to the coast under escort. The contemporaries on both sides saw the contrast at once, and so should we. And we should be fair about it. Saladin was not a saint, and this was policy as much as piety. A magnanimous conqueror wins a reputation, and reputation is power. But it was also real, and it happened, and against the memory of 1099 it was a thunderclap of a different kind. The city that Christian holy war had drowned in blood, Muslim holy war took back with mercy. And that is where the first great age of the Crusades ends, with Saladin at prayer in a Jerusalem restored to Islam, and the kingdom of Jerusalem reduced in a single season to a few last ports and one defiant city at Tyre. When the news crossed the sea, it hit Europe like the crack of doom. They said the shock of it alone killed a pope, that the aged Urban III died on hearing of the catastrophe at Hattin. The holy city, won in blood and held for 88 years, was lost. And out of the grief and the panic came the inevitable answer. A new crusade, the greatest yet, and this time it would not be led by landless younger sons. This time the crowned heads of the West themselves would take the cross. 3 kings would answer, the old Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, Philip of France, and, above all, a red-haired warrior prince whose name would become a legend set against Saladin's own, Richard the Lionheart. The holy city was lost, and across the sea, the greatest kings of the West were already buckling on their sword belts. That collision, the most famous duel of the entire crusading age, Richard against Saladin, is where we go next time in episode 5. If you're following the series, subscribe and I'll see you there.